Hi, this is Tom, and welcome to the Car Journey. In today's episode, we're going to talk about why I picked a Supra to compete for the 2023 season, how I came to that conclusion, and the logic I used to make that selection, and maybe that'll help some of you have a little maybe deeper insight into your next car you pick. I know that most of us get into motorsports one of three ways. You either have the car you have, and you're just going to run that, or two, you have a car that you love, and that's the one you want to compete with. Or three, you've taken a hard look at the rule book and have figured out that this car that you've picked is the better car for your competition or your enjoyment. With that in mind, there's cars I would take a long look at. I like cars that tend to have lower consumables most of the time, like FRSs. Big fan of an FRS, have one in the garage now. I've had a GR86, same thing, just newer version of it. Of course, you can't rule out a Miata, whether it's this kind of Miata or even one that's more upgraded like this one, or even whatever the hell this thing is. That could be your car. But for me, I like something that tends to make a little bit more stock power, and then the power level can be raised from there because I find it more reliable to start with the higher baseline of power than trying to squeeze a lot of power out of a small car. I'm not one of those guys that likes to pull your transmission or your engine frequently. With those things in mind, a EV like a Model 3 Performance or a newer Model S might be very tempting, but for me, I ruled them out at this time just because I still kind of like the old internal combustion engine and the noises it makes. Also, more recently in the news that they're not allowed at certain facilities now because that facility does not want to invest in the proper fire suppression system, since otherwise, left untreated, those things will burn for hours. So, with all that in mind, I ended up picking the Toyota GR Supra 3-liter, and here it is. And you can see in the videos that I've made some modifications. I did buy the car already with a Pure800 Turbo, which is a hybrid turbo, which means they took a stock turbo and they changed some of the internals, the compressor wheel and the exhaust wheel, to make it flow a little bit more at the top end. And unfortunately, that sacrifices some spool time, which in autocross might prove difficult this year. Early testing says that maybe I can learn to drive around it, but still going to be a challenge because when it does hit, it hits rather hard. It has quite a boost spike, even though I've worked with my tuner to kind of take that edge off. We've addressed cooling on this car, so it should be able to run lap after lap during a time trial or a track day without really going into too much of a power reduction mode, even on a hot day. It's currently just running on regular 91 octane pump gas, which is what we can get here in the Southwest. The car has the capability to run E85. I do have some of the equipment in there. I just need to readdress the entire fueling system, which is actually quite expensive to be done right with surge tank. So I'm saving that for later on in the season. The coilovers have been done. Shaftworks one-way adjustable with 800-pound front springs and about, I think, 1,250-pound rear springs. And so that's quite off the charts for what I've seen shared in the groups, but so far in my two track days I've done with it, I found it to be working really well with that Cusco 28mm front sway bar, stock rear bar, and uh, depending on the tire, I've run the Kumho V730 at 275 with, and I also have a set of the newer Bridgestone RE-71RS, which is going to be our primary autocross tire this year, although it might see some track use as we try and set down some hot laps. But so far, the car out of the box has worked really well. That's partially based on knowing some really intelligent people like Jonathan Lugat over there at Shaftworks, giving me kind of a baseline alignment and spring rates and valving, which he custom valves all of those one-way adjustable shocks, so can't say enough nice things about that. And then some coaching from him as well about how to drive around the way this differential works. It's an electronically controlled factory differential clutch style, and so the way it locks up and unlocks requires certain patience, because if you in the middle of a corner do a full lift, the diff will actually unlock and you'll get a very different behavior than when you go back to the gas pedal compared to where it was previously when it was locked, and you might have quite a scary moment if you're not prepared for that. So it teaches you some commit to throttle discipline. But otherwise, the car also has some Verus aero. We've added the Verus, what's now considered the low downforce front splitter, the UCW wing, and the rear diffuser. I'm hoping to get some canards probably later this year. It's a little bit difficult because it's not very clear if I can make those legal for SCCA Time Trials Max 2 class, which is where this would fall for time trials under the SCCA. Under the other organizations I run with, it's not a big deal. They don't have that enforcement. Either you take a hit for having aero or you don't, and I'm mostly in the higher level of those classes. And so then, of course, the other focus for this car is autocross. And so for autocross, uh, we've tried to keep the valving and spring rates in something that'll still work in a bumpy parking lot as well as a relatively smooth track. Uh, so far, I've had 4 test runs on one day and kind of a small 6-run autocross with PCA more recently, and the car favored really well. Was the fastest car there by over a second. And I think there was more in the car. I think I just needed to get better at driving it, and I've shared that video. Wasn't my best run because the camera was having issues on my best run, but you got to see kind of the car's performance. And if you didn't, I'll link that below. But otherwise, this car has really worked well out of the box, and that's basically because of experience selecting something I'm familiar with. Front engine, rear wheel drive, higher power. Um, this car did dyno. I'm going to put a picture here of the dyno at a little over 525 wheel horsepower and a little over 530 wheel torque, and it basically holds it from about 3,500 RPM. It starts climbing pretty hard and stays there all the way to the 7,000 RPM red line, or rev limit, I should say. And as you can imagine, it hits pretty hard there, as you can see, because it hits that high torque level so soon. What's interesting is that despite that high power on the track, it doesn't feel like it's enough. I definitely could see wanting more and investing in going fully E85 so I could do that. But I would probably add about 100 wheel horsepower and torque. But for autocross, it already feels like too much. I'm actually not running the strongest map. I'm running a map that limits the wheel torque to just 450 because that seems like it delivers plenty, since most of the course is done in third gear, which is about 80 miles an hour top of third gear. With slower corners, I'm now dropping to second. Anything under about 40, maybe even 35 miles an hour, I'll drop that low just to not have that turbo lag, because again, it's a hybrid turbo and it loses a little bit of its low end. So this is my Supra, and coming up this year, we're going to be competing. Next weekend's already the first SECA points autocross of the year, and a couple weeks after that's the first local time attack for me. I missed the first one because I was out of town, and then kind of the events start coming heavy. So with any luck, we'll get a video out at least a week, and the content will probably vary between covering a little bit of the Supra build. I don't intend this to be like a how-to channel, but I am willing to cover settings and part selection, that sort of thing. But also that there'll be event videos mixed in there, some good ones, some competition, and hopefully some shenanigans with my friends. So if you've stayed here to the very end, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back, and we'll see you out there.